Okay, so let's quickly start this session. So guys, in today's this is our 18th Surat MuleSoft Meetup, and we will going to discuss about what is the importance of persistent queue, a VM connector, and what is the object store version 2. So we will mostly focus on object store version 2, and also we will see how we can access the object store from on premise to cloud up basically, and how we can access the object store using REST APIs. What are the different APIs available. So we're going to focus on those things. So myself is the organizer for Surat and the Nasik MuleSoft Meetup, and currently I'm working as a senior solution architect at Capgemini, and I'm a Surat and the Nasik MuleSoft Meetup leader and also MuleSoft ambassador, having like 13 years of experience in the integration and the API technology. I'm a MuleSoft certified architect as well as developer. Yeah, Nitish, next, if you want to introduce yourself, you can go ahead.
Sure, Jackie. Thank you. Hello, everyone. I am Nitish Jain, and I am also a MuleSoft Meetup leader for Surat, and I'm certified developer and integration architect, and I'm working more than 2.5 years in MuleSoft.
Okay.
Welcome all.
So agenda for today meetup, like we will go through a persistent queue, object store, VM connector. Then there will be a live demonstration, and finally there will be trivia queues. Also, in object store, we will see a few other things how we
Uh,
can access REST APIs. Yeah. Okay.
Jackie,
Let
sorry
me
to
share my
interrupt.
screen.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
I came to know that. Yeah. Thanks, Nitesh. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Sorry for that. That's fine. So, as I mentioned, we will discuss about what is the importance of persistent queue in the cloud hub, and also we will discuss about VM connector with the various design pattern like pattern. In object store, we will focus on object store version 2, and we will see some difference between object store version 2 and object store version 1. And also we will see what are the different REST APIs, what are different APIs available to access the object store partition, object store keys, object store values. And also we will see one demonstration where we will try to access, we will deploy one application into the cloud hub with the object store, and we will try to access a key value pair from the on-premise application. So also finally, yeah, there will be a trivia quiz. Okay, so basically we will use the count for trivia quiz. So what is a persistent queue? Let's start with the session. So what is a persistent queue? And the persistent queue is a cloud service that allow messages that are published to VM queue to be stored externally to the application. So what does this mean? So when you deploy any application in the cloud hub with having a VM connector, right? If you enable the option called persistent queue, it means what it will do, it will create a, a queue externally to the application. Otherwise, what happen? It create the queue in memory basically, right? So in this case, what will happen when you select the option called enable persistent queue on the cloud of while deploying the application, it will ensure that the queue is created externally to the application. It will be not part of your application, it will be not in memory basically. Okay, so this feature is directly tied into cloud of fabric feature and is a part of cloud of high availability infrastructure. So basically it is always recommended to use a persistent queue option when you are deploying the application on two workers with VM queue. Basically, if you have a VM connector, if you have used a VM application and you are going to deploy on two worker, then you can use this enable persistent queue option. Okay, when cloud of persistent queue is enabled, it allows developer to design the VM queue in such a way that payloads can be shared across the different workers for the purpose of load distribution. So also one of the advantage of using the persistent queue, it will share load across the both worker. So even there is a possibility in the middle of flow, the load can be transferred to other workers. So what happened? Let's consider I have received the request on one worker. So I have done some processing, I put the message on into the queue, so the other worker can read that message from the queue and start doing the further processing. So that is how we are achieving the clustering in the cloud hub. So like using vmq or and the persistent queue option, we can do some kind of clustering in the cloud hub also. Okay. So in case of like if one of the worker got failed in the middle of like processing, like you publish the message into queue and like one of the worker got failed, so we have a other worker who can also pick the message from queue and start processing the data and start processing that particular message. But always make sure you always use these options whenever you are deploying the application on multiple worker. If you are planning to deploy the application on one worker, you should not go with this option because it comes with some limitations also. We will going to see in the further slides. Let me go to like persistent queue, where we can use the persistent queue. What are the different use cases? So basically I mentioned like when you want to do the workload distribution, like in multi worker environment, you can make use of this persistent queue. Okay. So also it can be like if you want like to enable the high resiliency or high availability, or like to enable the performance due to load distribution and sharing capabilities. So cloud of persistent queue will improve the high availability, resiliency, and the performance due to load distribution and the sharing capabilities. So basically, the as I mentioned, it is possible. Like once you enable the option called persistent queue, the message can share across the multiple worker. In case of any worker got failed, the other worker is capable of processing that particular message, right? So it is also possible a single message can process by a multiple worker, but it will ensure that the message is processed only once time. Okay. So what are the recommendations? So basically like somebody consider a persistent queue with a reliability pattern. So reliability pattern is something different. So reliability pattern means like persistent delivery or a guaranteed delivery. Either it will ensure that like the message is delivered like 100 and 100%, like there is a zero loss of message. So that is the reliability pattern. But persistent queue is something is different basically. So basically like so persistent queue should not be considered as a reliability pattern. Okay. So like and also as I mentioned, like you should not consider this persistent queue as a reliability pattern. So there is a different way of implementing the reliability pattern with the VM connector. We will going to see that. But the persistent queue doesn't mean you have enabled the persistent queue. It does you have enabled the reliability pattern. So like persistent queue doesn't ensure like 100% of guarantee also, like okay, but it is good for high availability. Yeah. Hello.
Jackie, there are two questions
Yeah.
by Victor and Silvio.
Victor, I will come on that. Like, he will, if we go one worker only, then how will be enable? So in one worker, Rahul, as I mentioned, you should not. The persistent queue is not the option from one worker. Basically, it is option for two worker. In that case, if you are enabling from one worker, like so in case like so it doesn't make sense, right? So how the workload will distribute, like in case of one worker, right? Correct. So you should not do for one worker. You should do for the multiple worker, Rahul. I will come on that how performance. No, persistent queue cannot be shared by a different application, right? It is possible for on-premise runtime when you are deploying all your application on single runtime. In that case, you can share a VM connector across. No, in case of clustering, silo, like in case of clustering, like when you are using the clustering data grid, it is possible to share the message across the application. That is on-premise, but in case of cloud hub, it is not possible. Okay. Yeah. So Ashley, right. So basically, you can use the persistent queue. Can be only that option is only available for the cloud hub basically. Okay. For on-premise, it is available. Like you can do it at application level itself. But when you are deploying at a cloud hub, you have to explicitly go and tick that option. I will show that, Ashley. Okay. No, this is for VM only. Rahul, it is for VM only. Okay. It is only for VM connector. So Tapan, like for RTF, you have to enable that application level. Like I will show you when you on VM connector. So there is an option you can create two kind of queue. One is persistent and one is like transient, right? So like for RTF, as per my like as per my information, it just support a transient kind of thing. It doesn't support persistent right now. A runtime fabric doesn't support a persistent store for now, right? So it generally support everything as a transient basically, Tapan. Okay. So yeah, so I will come on this performance and everything going forward. Okay. So as I mentioned, the strong recommendation is that persistent queue should not be considered as the feature of use when designing the reliability pattern in the cloud hub. We said that persistent queue should not be never enabled for the single worker application. For true reliability pattern, the queue use like if you want to enable like see for temporary purpose, if you can use the VM queues and all those things for small message processing and like that. But if you want to use like enterprise level of reliability pattern or something like that, you have to go with any point MQ, active MQ, IBM queue, or any other JMS or MQP broker basically. Okay. So performance, like somebody asked me the performance, definitely the performance will reduce. It reduce by 10 times, like so application with cloud of persistent queue will process the message up to or more than 10 times slower than not using the cloud of persistent queues. Okay. So it will definitely reduce by 10 times. The performance is also further decrease if you are enabling the encryption option. So basically there is a once you enable the persistent queue option, it also open to encrypt the message while storing the persistent queue. This also degrade the performance. Why? Because it got the persistent queue is using a network attached store. So basically it use some disk where it create a queue, right? So that is some network disk, right, which requires some IO, read and write operation. Basically it read and it write into queue, then other message will pick. So basically it requires some IO kind of input output operation. So that's why it takes some time. It adds some network latency or network, some add some network latency. So you need to take care, in this you need to consider this basically. Okay. So when you disable this particular option, everything will be stored in memory and has almost instance like it there is a no latency basically, like but you need to take care of this also basically. Okay. Any other question? Let Yes, currently like actually the persistent queue can be only implemented, that option is already available in the cloud app. But you can do one thing, like when you are configuring the VM connector, you can say this VM must be a persistent basically. But for that, for your on-premise application, clustering must be enabled, then it will give the persistency. Okay. No other question. I'm sorry. Yeah. Message retention. So basically cloud of persistent queue can retain message up to 4 days after that the message is lost. And even the retention period is not customizable. Because of this, cloud of persistent queue should not be used for long-term storage. Okay. So you should not use when you want to process like long running processes for 5 days, 10 days. You should not go with the persistent queue. You can use any physical queue like any point time queue or SQS, whatever, okay. So batch job. So batch job is internally make use of queue. When cloud of persistent queue is enabled for the application with batch processor, a severe performance degradation will occur. So basically ensure that for batch job it already using lot of queue mechanism inside like internally. So you should avoid using like persistent queue for batch kind of jobs also. Batch also has its own set of limitation incur if using the persistent queue. The significant one is that message reliability is not guaranteed. The message loss can still occur in case of application restarted. This limitation, there is a no benefit from having the cloud of persistent queue enabled for batch application. So always see the batch application is already using like internal queues for it processing. So they generally mention like it is recommended not to use the persistent queue for the batch processing. Like it will not guarantee the 100% delivery, like you cannot enable the reliability pattern and those kind of things. So there are various limitations that you need to consider while implementing the persistent queue. Okay, so let me show that option. So basically, if you deploy the application, right, and manage application, on that side, I have an option called persistent queue. If you click on this persistent, and as I mentioned, once you like enable the persistent queue, it will definitely degrade application performance. Even if you click the encrypt the persistent queue, it will degrade the more, because for the encryption and decryption it takes some more time, right? So please, make sure like what you like enabling this particular option. So if you see in queues, I don't have any queue attached right now, right? So I have deployed some application, having some VM queues and everything. So what I can do, I can go back to my applications. I can go to VM Mule app, can go to manage application, build the persistent queue. Right now I'm using the one worker because it is restricted, but you can do that. Apply changes. Yes, correct, Tapan. It is internally uses SQS, some kind of. You are right. So let me check while my application is deploying. I will go to next slide. Any other question? So like Victor, have your question has been like covered for like performance, right? So how is the performance of persistent queue? It will degrade the performance of application, right? Because there is a network storage attached with your cloud up, and it will create like some folders and queues on that particular disk space, and it requires some IO input and output, read and write operation, which add additional latency to your application. Okay. So basically, we will talk about the VM connector till our application gets started. So VM connector like manage a inter or intra communication via persistent or transient asynchronous queue. So persistent and asynchronous queue basically. So it is very useful when you want to do inter or intra application communication. Okay, that is also possible with the VM connector. So it provides two kind of functionality. One is transient queue, one is persistent queue. A transient queue is the faster than persistent queue, but not reliable. Okay, transient queue is persistent queue but not reliable. What does this mean? So transient is basically in memory queue. Once you restart the application, if there is any message exist in that particular transient queue, the message will lose. In case of persistent queue is reliable but slower than transient queue. So in that case, what happen, it write a data to file or to some disk space, right? Application restart, the data is persisted. Okay, persistent basically, you can retrieve the data after restart or shutdown of your application. Okay, so where we can use the VM connector, one of the use cases for using the VM connector, when you want to pass the message between the flows basically. So basically, like one of the use case, if you want to pass message from one flow to another flow, you can make use of VM queue across the cluster. So basically, you might be heard about the clustering basically, right? The clustering is nothing, it's a group of server which act as a single unit. So in cluster, how can you do the load balancing? So basically, my half of the message must be processed by node 1 and half of the message must be processed by node 2. So if is there any possibility if I complete half of processing, and half of processing needs to be done by node 2 and half of the processing must be done by the node 1. So in that case, you can make use of the queues basically. In the flow, what you can do, you just do some processing, push the message to queue. So there might be chances the node 2 can pick the message and start doing the further processing. Let's consider node 2 pick the message, it done the processing, done some kind of processing and publish the message to queue. The node 1 can start picking the message and do the remaining processing. So such kind of functionality, such kind of distribution of the workload can be achieved using the VM connector. So communicating with the different application that are running the same mule domain. So basically, like if your application is running, like if you have a mule multiple application which are running in the same mule domain, basically like you have created one default domain and everything, everybody is running in the same domain, like domain. In that case, you can share that queue across the application. That is only possible for on premise, it is not possible in the cloud hub. Okay, so you can have a domain in the like on premise application only, you cannot have a domain in the cloud hub, right? And if you want to perform any simple queuing that doesn't justify the use of full gms broker, just you want to push the message temporary and you have to just retry, you just have to pass the message from one flow to another flow where you can make use of the vm connector. Okay, so let me check if my application is deployed. So once application will be deployed, it will show all the queues now. See, it can show the queue. So basically, I will tell you, I have an application. Let me open that. So OS, where is my application lost? Let me open that. So this is my application. Okay, in this application, I have a three queues, like one for reliable delivery, one for I have a VM queues basically. If you see, I have published the message. So I have a queue. I have a test VM. Then for reliable delivery, I might be having transaction VM. Let's open it, taking some time. Before that, any question? Yeah, Rahul, I will show it. Like Rahul, that's what I'm trying to show. Okay, Rahul, so I will be showing that. I will come on that. Okay, so let me first show me that demo. So basically, I have other queue, a request reply queue. So you can see, so everything, all the queues, you can see it here: transaction queue, request reply queue. So when we enable the enabled persistent queue option, you can see the all the queues here, and it also is give the small graph and everything basically. Okay, so you can see that. So how many messages has been processed and like how many messages has been queued. So right now nothing is there. So we will see some example also. So before, let me move to some different slide. Okay, where is the disk tool? So we don't know, like Rahul, where, like it attach some network disk. So we don't disk because it's a iPaaS, it's an integration platform as a service. So we don't have to worry about the underlying hardware or underlying infrastructure that has been automatically managed by MuleSoft, Rahul. Okay, so we are not worried about that infrastructure. So that has to be automatically handled, what where the network storage has been attached. So we are not aware of all this location because it's a iPaaS, it's an integration platform as a service. So we don't have to worry about the underlying platform. So see, Rahul, generally what happened, like you use the flow reference basically, right? So you use the flow reference to pass the message to the other flow, right? So within the same application, but you can also make use of VMQ also. But the main advantage comes of VMQ when you are deploying application to on-premise. When you're deploying the application to on-premise on the same domain, it is possible to use the intra application queues. So basically you can use the queue of one application from the other application. So main advantage we are getting in the on premise basically. Okay, for cloud hub, you can definitely, if you want to pass the message from one flow to other flow, you can make use of that. Otherwise there is a flow reference. I will not suggest for passing the message. Yes, Victor, you are right. It might be, it is located in AWS basically, right? It is AWS storage basically. Okay, so now let me go with the next slide. suggest never use VM queue for transferring message between the flows from one flow to another flow. So you don't use that. Like if you want to transport the message between the two flow which are located in different application, right? In that case, you can use the VM queue. You don't have other option. You have to use the VM queue, right? If they are part of same domain. So basically, I have a application one, I have a application two. Application one has done some processing and the publish the message to the queue, to the VM queue, and I have a other flow in application 2, so that will listen to that queue and pick the message, and it will do the further processing. In that case, it is useful. For same application, why you will going to use the VM queue, right? It doesn't make sense, right? It, you can do that, but it doesn't make sense. You have a flow reference, you can make use of that. But sometime, if you want to enable a reliability, if you want to enable reliable pattern, or if you want to enable the transaction, then you within the between two flow, you don't have other option. You have to use the queue only. You have to use the VM queue. Any question? Is the question, Rahul? Correct. Manish, you are right. It should be part of domain project. You are correct. Or not domain, like all application must be part of same domain. So if you create some domain, all application must be part of same domain. Can we view the message on premise also, like how we can? No, Isneha, you cannot see the messages. That is one of the, like, it is not a complete JMS broker. UI, right? A graphical user interface where you can go and see the message. It is not possible. Okay, so you cannot see that. Dilip, like VMQ is, so generally I will suggest, like, when you are using the clustering, right? So VMQ perform very well in the clustering basically. So basically, if you want to shuffle the message between two nodes and between the flows, you can make use of VMQ basically, Dilip, right? So where it is very useful, Dilip. You are right. But Dilip, it doesn't make sense. Like if it can be listened by multiple nodes, but it will process by only one node. Okay, even there are application deployed to multiple node and which having the VM listener, but the queue itself have a property. The message will be processed by a single listener, right? So in that case, floor app can be replaced. Correct, Dilip. So it is for clustering, right? So in case of clustering, what happens? I will give you example. I have a application one, I have a application two. Sorry, I have a application one which is deployed to node one and which is deployed to node two in the cluster. Okay, that application have some complex processing. Okay, so like it have a few steps. So in that case, what happens? We perform some steps, right? Then publish the message to queue. So there might be chances the node 2 is free. He can pick the message from the node, like from the queue, and start doing the further processing. Then again, the node 2 done and some processing, again publish the message to the queue. Then the node 1 is free now. The bit node 2 become bit busy and node 1 is free. The remaining processing can be done by the node 1. So that is how a VM queue is important in case of clustering, to enable the high availability, to enable the distribute of workload basically. Okay, is this clear, Dilip? Yeah. What is next slide? So VM connector have a like four operation: listener, which will listen to message on the queue. Then we have a publish. Then we have a consume. Then we have a publish consume. It's not publish consumer. It's publish consume. So basically, publish consume help you to implement a request reply pattern basically. So in queue, you can have a request reply pattern also. So let me show example one by one. So the first example I will show you VM Mule app. Okay, so I have a simple application where I have HTTP listener which is listening to some messages. Just a minute, taking some time. Just give me a second. Okay, I will show from here. So what happening here? So basically I'm receiving some request on the HTTP listener JSON message, publishing this to a VM queue. So we have a VM connector which provide consume listener and the publish and publish consume. I am publishing this messages. Okay. Then finally I'm logging that. Okay. I'm publishing this message to VM queue. Okay. If you see the VM configuration, I don't know what happened here. Okay. Just give me a second. Let me remove this application from here. Something is going wrong here. Let me take. Till now, till application is starting. Just a minute, let me refresh it. Let me open VM meal queue. Okay. So what happened? I have, can you hear me right? So I have a one endpoint where like I am publishing some message to this particular VM. Then okay, so I have to do some connector configuration. So basically you have to do some connector where you don't provide any connection string, so you just have to give a VM name. So what type of VM is that? This is useful for on-prem, but when you deploy the application, this doesn't make any sense. Like you have to go and enable that persistent option there, like otherwise it will be transient only. Okay, make sure options works for the on-premise application, but for CloudHub you have to enable that option, go manually. Okay, so you have done this configuration and like then you are publishing this message. So I have a scheduler, okay, which runs every, and it start consuming the messages from that particular queue only, a test VM queue. So and it's logging it. Okay, so it's simply logging that message. So let me test that. Simple flow. So what I will do, I will open, I can go to application. It will be post body, then I can say raw. I will send the request. Let's see what happens. Okay, I got the success response. Let me check the logs. So if I go to VMQ, so here it will do the two logging. So after first it will publish and log, then after consume it will log, So let me check the logs. So you can see, you can forget this error. So message publish and it has picked that, and like this is why this is coming, because my application has some issues, but this is not because of this. So message has been published. So if you see the first log is that, if you see in this, the message publish, and this log is basically a message consume, right? So basically you can see the listener has published the message to VMQ, and here you have a scheduler which is reading the message from queue and logging it. This here, okay, you can ignore this error. So let me publish more message. Okay, let me publish one more. Let me publish few. So you can see the message has been published, and I got that message. Okay, so that is one thing. I will go with the second, a request reply pattern. Okay, in request reply pattern, what happens? So basically I will send the message to listener. This particular entity will use the publish consume operation. It will publish the message and it will wait for the response. Okay, it will wait for the response. Basically you can see the configuration here. Okay, so basically the timeout is around 5 seconds. Timeout is around 5 seconds. So basically it will publish, then once it will get the response, then what will happen? I have a queue listener. So basically this particular will publish the message to queue. Then I have a queue listener which will read from the same queue, a request reply queue. Okay, read the message, it will log it. It will log the request correlation ID. Then finally it will also log the payload. Then it will respond back with this particular correlation ID, basically. Okay, this correlation ID. Then once it the response, it will start logging the response from that particular correlation ID. Then it will log the payload also. It will log basically. So let me check what is it, URL request reply. So I will change this to request reply. So I got this successful correlation ID back. Let me check the logs. Okay, that's a, let me put one again. It will show. Yeah, so you can see here, basically you can see all the logs, everything is there. Payload, it gives the response from, like request from, everything has been logged. But if you see this particular ID, this particular ID 502 correlation ID, I must get same in the response also 502. So that is how you can work with the request reply pattern. Any question? See, generally what happens, like Tapan, it create a four threads basically, and the fourth thread will listen to the queue, right? But it will ensure that one thread is only processing the message. Like it will ensure that only one thread is receiving the message at a time, basically. Then if there's any free thread, and if there's any message in the queue, it will try to pick that message. So that is the significance of thread basically. Even you can keep one. Yes, correct. I have a lot of questions. Let me check. Yeah, JMS come with date letter queue and all this kind of thing. That is right. Okay. So let me go with other thing, a reliability pattern. So basically, I want to check a reliable delivery. I want to ensure that my message is always processed 100% basically. So here what I'm doing, I'm getting the message on my HTTP listener. Okay. On this reliable, and I am publishing this message to reliable queue basically. So I'm publishing this message to transaction queue. Okay, have a listener. So important settings. So when you have to do one setting on listener, what is that setting? You can go to advanced, and you all have to again make ensure that transactional action equals to always begin. So that you need to do. So basically you are beginning the transaction. In case of any failure further, it will ensure that the message is not lost, it is still in queue. Okay, so then I'm sending this message to one of the URL on the CloudHub. So basically I have one app where I'm sending this message. So let me show that app. So I have this MuleSoft Surat app. Okay, so let me post. So let me show you what it does. So once it will log the request and it will post it there, so to that particular flow. And what that particular flow with does, once it will receive the request, it not this one. Uh, where is Surat one? Okay, that particular I will explain. That particular flow is nothing. That particular flow just log the message that like that particular that application, right? Mule Surat app. It will just log the message which we will send. Okay. So let me do one thing. I will put reliable. Okay? Then I will put send. I will send two messages. Then I will check application of this particular app, logs of this particular app. You can see like at 4:46, two message has been logged. You can see that, right? At 4:46, two message has been successfully logged. Now what I will do, I want to show something else. So I will stop this application. Okay, I will stop this application. Okay, so now I will go to Mule VM queue. I will go to manage application. Then I will go to queues. Okay, so let me post the message. Let's see what happens now. So because now the application the like what will happen from the where is my flow, reliable delivery. It will publish the message to queue. From queue the listener will pick the message. Here I enabled the transaction. Now it will try to do the HTTP request. Application is down, so application request will return some error. In that case the message should not be lost. Okay, so let me send the request. I will get successful response because it's a first flow, right? The listener flow is different. So I sent 3, I sent 4, I sent. So here you can see the message is in flight. It has not been processed yet, right? So I've sent few of the messages. So they will try to process basically, but the message will be in the queue for next 4 days basically. So you can see there are some in-flight transactions available. Let's check logs. So total 5 messages I've sent. You can see 4 and 1. It's total 5 messages. So you can see that try to connect this particular application, but that is not available. So now what I will do, let me go back to queues. So you can see your total all the messages available in that particular transactions queue. So now what I can do, I can start this application. Any question till now? For JMS, you have to pay extra for servers and everything. Yeah. Any question? See, the listener is basically is used to read the message from queue, whereas consume. No, yeah, read the message from queue and consume. See, consume will also listener will see what happen whenever the message come to queue. It will pick the message. Whereas there is a consume operation in that you can read the message in between the flow, right? So basically, like I put the consume in between the flow. So, but the problem with consume, it can read one message at a time. It cannot read a multiple. The listener will automatically listen to queue, and whenever any new message come to listener, like any message to the queue, it will pick and it will process it. Correct. So I'm waiting for my application to deployed. I'm checking logs. Now you should like in some time the message you can see the message start processing, right? You can see that. So you can say mule surat app logs. You can see all message has been come 1 2 3 4 5, everything has been come. Let me check queue 1 2 3 4 5, all message has come. Let me check the queue of this VM application. It should be zero now. Now you can say it's zero. So everything has been successfully processed. So we haven't lost a single message here basically by enabling that transaction, right? Any question on this? Okay, let me go to next slide. So we have done the demo. So now what is the object store basically? So can anybody tell me what is the object store? Right now, Nitin, no. As such, there is a no restriction defined. What is object store? Like, okay, good. So let me start. So basically, object stores enabled you, to list of object store and key associated with the application. Basically it is used to store a key value pair, so basically like object store is basically used to store a key value pair, and it also provide the operation through which you can delete the key value pair, you can retrieve the key value pair. So where you want to use the object store? So basically object store connector is a mule component that allow for simple key value storage. Although it can be used for wide variety of use cases, it is mainly designed for storing a synchronized information like such as a watermark. If you see in batch processing, you have to maintain your watermarks, right? So like if you are doing this data synchronization between like NetSuite and Salesforce, so you need to store like last modified or last updated date. So such kind of data can be stored in the object store. It can be served as a temporary store, like a temporary storage, like you can make use of a temporary storage. Sometime like you want to maintain some key value pair, like so those can be done at or like in the object store. Also it can be also used to store your access token and like authorization header tokens and everything, or even it can be used to store your user information basically, right? So basically like MuleSoft came up with object store version 2 basically. So object store version 2 lets CloudHub application to store the data and state across the batch processes and mule components and application from within application or by using the object store REST API. So basically you can store a lot of application data, or like or like a lot of batch status, so in background. So there is some kind of like in background, like in background of the batch processing, there it also store the status, it also share the state between the object or between the batch processing, like using the object store basically. And also you can store your application data, you can store your application metadata in the object store. And also you can retrieve this data from object store using the object store REST API, or it also provide the object store connector. So you can make use of object store connector. The object store connector is supported by version 1 as well as version 2. Okay, so basically let's consider you have deployed one application in the CloudHub which having the object store version 2. Now you want to access some key value pair for your on-premise application from that CloudHub object store, which is possible using the CloudHub object store REST API. We will going to see that particular example. Okay, The other thing, you can configure Mule app to use the object store REST API to store and retrieve all the value from the object in another Mule app. So basically, you have a two application on CloudHub. You have application one and you have application two. In application one, you have an object store, and you want to use a key value pair in the application two. So how can I access that object store? Using CloudHub REST API. So CloudHub object store, CloudHub REST API basically. Okay, you can make use of that. We will see that example. So what are the different features? So basically it support both static and the rolling TTL for data persistent. So by default, the TTL is time to live is a 30 days. In case if your data key value pair got updated or modified, the the TTL got reset to another 30 days basically. Okay, the TTL get again reset to 30 days. Okay, so it allow unlimited number of key value pairs. So basically in object store version 1, there is some restriction on key number of key value pairs, but with version 2 you don't have any restriction. Basically you can store n number of key value pair. It can store up to 10 MB. The value must should not exceed 10 MB. It should be a 10 MB, right? If you are trying to storing value which is greater than 10 MB, you cannot do it in object store. Okay, is available in all supported region availability zone within the each region. So now the object store is available in all the AWS region and the availability zone. So previously in object store 1, it I think it is located in US East 1, and if even if application deployed in US East 2 or in Singapore, so they have to access the data from US East 1. But this is not constrained version 2. So basically if you are deploying in your application in US East 1, your object store will created in the US East 1. If you are deploying your application in Singapore, the object store will created in the Singapore in same region basically. Okay, it provide a Mule connector and a REST API, as I mentioned, like to access the object store, key value pair, all those things. It is end-to-end secure TLS transport. So basically, it use HTTPS protocol, and it encrypt also, like when it store the data, when we store the object store data, it encrypt using FIPS 142 compliant standards basically. Okay. Okay, so what, like there are more features. Basically, the object store connector works for both object store version 1 and object store version 2. So we have a single connector for version 1 as well as for version 2. Object store version 2 enforce the maximum data persistent of 30 days from time of creation, right? In case of if you are doing modification to data, the data like time to live will increase, will reset to again 30 days basically. The free object store version 2, this is very important when you are designing your API with, or like you want to make use of object store. This is very important. You can do only a 10 transactions per second with a free object store version 2. By default, whatever license you are purchasing, right? So you can just have a you can perform 10 transactions per second, not more than that. But if you want additional subscription or additional license, right, you can connect MuleSoft. You can buy a premium license where you can do 100 transactions per second per app. Keep this in mind, 10 transactions per second per app. If you are going with higher version of license, you can 100 transactions per second per app. Okay, to increase the TPS limit, you need to contact MuleSoft account teams. Okay, so this is something like I discuss about, like data persistent. So by default it is a 30 days. So like in case there is a rolling and static, in case the data is not changing, right? So after 30 days, if any static data after 30 days, it will automatically delete it from object store. In case of if you are modifying, if you are updating any key value pair, that again the time to live will reset to 30 days. So this is, even if you are mentioning the 31 days, it will consider 30 days only. It will not give any error. It will consider 30 days only. Okay, minimum is 1 second, maximum is 30 days. Okay, these are some difference which I've discussed. So maximum, like there's a, as I mentioned, you can store 100,000 key value pair per application. The key size should not be exceed 768 byte, 1 MB of value size, 1 GB of data per application. Okay, so basically here we have unlimited number of entity, unlimited total size of object store, but here you see only 1 GB of data per application, or 100,000 of key value pair per application. Okay, so but one thing is, with object store 1 there is a no API rate limit, but we have a here 10 transactions per second. In premium we have 100 transactions per second. Here we have a value size of 10 MB, a key length of 256 character. Here just 768 byte. If you divide by 8, so you will come to know what is the key length can be. Okay. So those kind of things provided by object store version 2, where you can have a key time to live up to 30 days, and it can be extended by 30 days if it is exist or it is modified. Okay. Unlimited number of entries, unlimited total type of object, max value of 10 MB, max key length 256. It can be deployed any region, or any region or within any availability zone. It using the FIPS 142 persistent store. It support like attributes like expiration interval, max entries, all those things. And just only one disadvantage, like you get API rate limit with standard version of 10 transactions per second, but with premium you get 100 transactions per second. Any question? Tapan, like I will not give the more information license. So, like if you are going with the premium version of license, like you need to check with the MuleSoft sales team, account team to increase the TPS basically. Okay. So yeah, you are right. You are right. You have to go with higher license to get the more TPS basically. Correct. Or if even you have a low license, you can check with your partner, like pro a MuleSoft account team, and they can tell you like how can we increase that. That is also possible option. You don't have to always buy a higher license, I think. Here I will saying 10 MB is per key. So against one key you can store up to 10 MB of data. Against second key again you can store 10 MB of data. Okay. So value must, the one single value must not exist more than 10 MB. Actually, yeah, you can say you are almost, yeah, I can, most of the component, yeah, you can say it's on the top of AWS on, because it is using the AWS in the background basically. So for connector, you have to use the JMS connector. So Dipti, you can use the JMS, and you can use Anypoint MQ or like JMS connector, and you can make use of like active MQ, where you can use, where you get a capability of dead letter queues and all those things. Any other questions? I think Ashish is giving a lot of answers. So thank Ashish. Okay. So let me go. Yeah. So I will come to queues. I will give us some demo here. So I deployed one app with object store demo app. So this is my application. Okay. So if you open this application, you can say logs, you can say object store. You will see the object store here. So this is my object store. This is my partition. Is there any key available here? Yes. Is there any value available here? Yeah. So this is my value. So I put one key already there. I want to put more key. So basically what I have done, I created one small application. Basically, it is listening, and like whenever the request comes, it's storing in object store. Basically, so okay, so let me check. This is the object store. So by default, it is persistent. So I'm saying like if even you are putting the 31 days, it will take 30 days only, the entry time to live. But you can reduce to minimum up to 1 second. So minimum up to 1 second and maximum up to 30 days. Okay, so you can also put expiration interval, and so like if you want, like like you want to get expire, like even there are changing of data or anything, you can put that expiration interval. And I will make this object store as a persistent, like so I want to make this object store in case of application restart, I don't lose the data also. So this is possible in the cloud hub also, so you can do that. Okay, so simple object store provide a various method. Let me show that also. So basically, object store provide a various method: contain, remove, retrieve all key, store. So basically, store is used to send the key value pair. So that's why I use the store. And I want like to retrieve data, I can use the retrieve. Any key and value I have to retrieve, I can use the retrieve method. So let me show you how can we do that. So let me find out the HTTP listener part. This is OS store. Okay, I will go to application, OS demo app, OS store. I use the post method. JSON. I'm just saying text. I can say name in the. So I'm passing this particular value. Let me send it OS store. I got successful response. Let me check on my object store manage if any new. You can go to object store. Just click on this. Click on this. Click on this. Click on this. Okay, so my name is in this partition basically, and this is the value. I have put some more thing is send. Let me refresh this. So you can see all my keys, age and salary, name within this particular partition. So basically it creates some partition, like, somebody told you DynamoDB kind of partition basically. Okay. So first object store, under object store, there is a partition, under partition, there is a key, against key, there is a value basically. You can see that. Now I want to retrieve, age basically. So basically I have some, like I can copy this. I can use this. I can use OS retrieve. So I have other method, OS retrieve. Basically, I can pass a key which is equals to name. So I got test. Okay. So key which is equal to name. Let me check. It should not be test, I think. Let me put age. I don't know why it's coming as a test. Give me a second. Let me check flow. Yeah, I put default value. That's why. So yeah, I need to redeploy it. Okay, let me export it. Okay. Okay. No, no, I had done some mistake. Wait. It took default. Need to redeploy it. So it's query param only, right? Query param key. No. Let me redeploy. Any question till application get redeployed? Okay. So till that I will define some REST API. So basically, like you have some kind of REST API where you can make use of REST API, to get all the list of stores basically, to get list of partition, and like to get list of keys, and to get the list of values against the key. So let me show you one by one. So basically you have to use the first anypoint login API. So please don't use my password. So so I can use make use of any point login API where you have to pass username and the password for your account. I can say send. Okay, I have some let me refresh my postman. It is any question, can you check the chat box till I'm setting up postman?
Am I audible? Yeah, Jackie. There are some questions, but we have answers as well on the same side.
Sushant, like in case if you are using the persistent object store, right? So in that case, your data will be retained basically. Okay. In case if you are using the transient object store, you are not using the persistent object store, your data will be lost with restart. Yes, we have a something called retrieve all. You can have it, right? So you can either you can retrieve all or you have to retrieve one by one. Okay.
Jackie, there is one question from Rahul. He just want to see the configuration of object store.
Yeah, I will. Uh, okay, let me show that. So you can go to global element, and here you can see a object store. It's very simple. Like you just have to mention persistent. If you are not clicking this as a persistent, that means it's a transient object store. Entry detail, so time to live and TTL unit, you can define it. And either you want to explicitly, even the data is axis or data is whatever happening with data, so you can define expiration interval and expiration interval unit basically. Any other question? Can you check, Nitish? Okay, so let me use the login API again. Okay, I got the bearer token. So now we will see one by one. So step by step. The first thing, I want to get all the stores basically. So basically I want to get all the stores. Okay. So for what parameters we require for that? To get all the stores, we require organization ID, we require environment ID, right? You can pass the organization ID, you can pass the environment ID. Okay. So I already have it with me. Just I will copy this thing. Okay. So fetch object store. Okay, this is the command. So where you can find the organization ID and the environment ID from any point platform. So that are the URI parameter. Then also you have to pass authorization header, that is the bearer token. Okay. You can send the request. So if you see you got your object store ID, is it encrypted true? What is like TTL? Is this persistent? All this value you got it. Multiple object store, you will get a multiple value. But right now in my application, I have a one. So now I face the object store. Now I have to face the partition. So what is the object which we have seen? So if you see each object store is linked with some partition basically. Okay. So there is a get. So here you have to pass like organization ID, environment ID, and the store ID. The store ID is just now retrieved, right? In this fetch object store, basically. This is my store ID basically. So you can go to object store partition. Okay, you just replace that token again with which we have generated. Then if you can see, I am passing the organization ID, I am passing the environment ID, then I'm passing the store ID slash partition send. So there are two partition, I think. Yeah. So there are two partition, object store and default partition. So both has been successful to me basically, right? Now I want to fetch all the keys. For fetching all the keys in my object store, so I have a two partition. One is default and one is object store, right? So let's see if we fetching the keys. So we have a key method here. So in key get, what we have to pass? We have to pass an organization ID, environment ID, store ID, partition ID, and the keys basically. Okay. So let me check what we are passing here. We are passing organization ID, environment ID, store ID, and default partition slash keys. So we are passing a default partition. Let me put header. I will change my authentication token and send the request. So I have only one key, that is age, right? But I have other partition. I think this is object store. Let me copy this. So let me check how many keys in this. So for that, I will simply change a default partition. Send. So I got all the remaining keys basically. Okay, I got that right. So I want to do one more thing. I know what is the problem. Wrong. I haven't assigned the object store to this. Let me save and redeploy it. Okay. So now where is my postman? Yeah, this is my postman. So now fetch key values. So basically I want to fetch a value basically. So I will show you what we can do. First let me change the header. Where it is. Shit, it's not copying again. So fetch value. Now fetch value. So if you see the method here, so store ID, key and key ID. So here to fetch the value, you have to pass a key ID. So basically a partition ID and slash keys and key ID. So key ID is nothing, it's a name of the key basically. So in this case, so basically what I'm passing, default partition. So instead of default partition, I will use the other partition, the object store one. Okay, so I will use this partition. Now I will send the request. I want to retrieve age. It will return a age in the binary format basically. Okay. So you will get in the binary format. Let me put a name also. This time my key name. So you can use the data wave binary module and you can convert this into actual key. Okay. So this is how we can retrieve a data. Now what I have done, I have deployed one simple application on on-premise runtime basically. So if you see, I have deployed one simple application on my Mule on-premise runtime. Where is my Mule runtime? Okay, apps. This is apps. So I've declared OS REST app. So let me explain that. What is that application? So basically in this application, I want to retrieve, I want to read, okay, the flow. I want to read the object store from the CloudHub. So basically what I've done, I'm listening to one of the I am listening to some messages. Okay. So here I will post some key. I will post some data on this, and then I am reading a key as a query parameter. Then I am transporting message. Here I am just building my username and password, and I am using this logging API. As I mentioned, we have to generate the token, right? So we can use this logging API, and whatever body I build it, I am passing this as a body. Then I am setting the variable. Okay. So basically, this, as you know, like this logging API, okay, return this particular token, right? Access token. So I'm just reading that access token, then I'm making the request. So this is the URL. So I'm making this particular value URL, fetch object stored value. I'm using this URL. So where I'm saying, I want to fetch, I want to paste the value for this particular key. So you can see this URL. Okay, where key will be coming as a query parameter. I have set up that, key as a like URI parameter. Key is vars.wv key basically, right? So I've deployed that application into the on premises. Okay, and let me test it. It might be somewhere here. Yeah, HTTP localhost OS key is. So let me send the request. Okay, login failed. It should not be like that. My login is failing. Let me check. Okay. So I already generate token. I can use that. So that's fine. Like, so that is how you can make the request and you will get the value back, So that is how you have to use the HTTP request, and your object store is located. I have to change, I think, some password mistake. So you can make use of this. Okay. To like, you can make use of HTTP request, or you can make use of the object store to retrieve the value from the cloud up. Also, you have to ensure that when you are using the URL, right, you have to pass this region properly. If your object store in US East 2, you pass as a US East 2. You don't pass as a US East 3 or something like that. Okay. So the regions, this value must be changed according to the region, basically. Okay. So by default, if you see it here, it will, everything is shown as a US East 1, but you have to change it according to your region, basically. Okay. So let me check if my application is deployed. Yeah, it is deployed. OS demo app. Okay, I want to key salary. I got the salary, and like I want name Jitendra. Before we start with quiz, Raul, you don't have to create a partition. This is automatically created inside. Okay, so basically, like you can have a, you have a, like each application. Like I will tell you in simple word. Okay, so you can have a multiple object store configuration, right? In your one application you can have a multiple object store configuration. That configuration is nothing, that is a one partition. Like if you have a two different configuration, it will create two partition. So within that part, it's nothing like you can have a two different object store with two different name, basically, right? So it will create within the same application, it will create two partition. If three partition, if four, it will create four partition, right? So we create using object store configuration. How many, the number of configuration you created for object store in your application, it will create n that number of partition. Can we please click on object store message flow? Which message, Rahul? Can you name, like I have a lot of thing. Which one? This one? Can we do like if payload has a, then out of three keys XYZ retrieve key Y from OS. If value is B, then retrieve Z. See, object store is not made for any business kind of logic, Rahul. It is just for a simple or like simple key value pair storage. Basically, it doesn't you cannot do that, right? You like it is simply a kind that you can write outside the flow, and depending on that, you can store the data in the object store. It is just a key value pair. Please, can you click on the store in the message flow?
All I've given you the access, you can speak up.
Yeah, yeah. Here I have click it. Can you see that?
Yes, yes, you can. I wanted to see this part.
Because what I'm doing, I'm passing the like I'm just splitting, right? No, if you see my body, right? So mm, it is like that salary 3,000, right? I'm just this is just a message. So I'm just splitting into column, and I'm storing that as a key value pair basically. Okay, but you cannot write kind of logic, but you can write some kind of data view expression here basically. But it will support one key value pair in one row basically, not multiple key value pairs. Like one key, one value. Okay, if you want to store multiple value, like you can concatenate, and you can do it, right? You can define the logic outside that, and you can store it as you want, Rahul.
Okay, thank you, Jitendra.
Yeah. You got partition, Rahul, right? Your question is what is partition? You got it, right? So
Yes, yes.
number of config you create in your object store in your application, it will create that number of partition. If you are not creating any object store config, like when I say config, what does it mean? I will tell you. So this is the config when you are configuring this, right? So if you are not doing anything, if you leaving this as a empty, right? You are not creating any config, it will create a default partition. Okay.
Yes, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay. I think we can start with, is there any way we can restrict the access to one certain object store? I am seeing all, uh, yeah, actually it is linked with the same organization, right? Then in that case, you create a different business group, and you deploy the application into a different business group. So that is how you can restrict it. Otherwise, there is no possibility. Yeah, y- yeah, you don't have that, like what like there is no possibility like one object store can access by XYZ client, the second object store can access by ABC client. That is not possible. That kind of functionality is not available. But you can do that. Okay, logic, like what you can do, whatever user you are creating, right? Like whatever user you are creating, in that you can like if you have any role present, let me check to access object store. Let me check, I'm not aware of that. Let me check if there is any role related to OS is available, then you can don't give the access to that role for that particular user. So that is how you can restrict it. I don't think, but this kind of thing is available right now.
Uh, Jackie, but I guess we can also use object store in non-Mule apps. So if it is non-Mule app, then there won't be a user or platform thing, right? So
Correct, that's what I'm
I
thinking.
guess it's only for client ID and secret will be the thing to use object store.
Correct, correct. I don't think we can restrict it. See, domain project is something on premise. We are talking about CloudHub, right? We have object store in domain project, use it. Yeah, that is fine. But that is when you want to share the object store across the multiple projects, then you can make use of domain project, right? But otherwise, it doesn't make sense for domain projects also, right? Yeah. Yesterday, I will give answer. It's not possible once you given the access to runtime manager for read or read access, right? Anybody like that particular user can read any object store basically. We don't have a like functionality where we can restrict the application wise access. It is not possible, right? As per my information, as per my knowledge, it is not possible, right, Nitish?
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Any other question? Like if I miss anything, just let me know. You can reach me on like LinkedIn also. I
Uh,
think covered everything. Yeah, you can share your screen. Like, no, I will stop sharing. You can
Okay,
start
sure.
with quiz.
Okay, sure, Jackie. Okay. So My screen is visible, Jackie.
Yes.
Okay, so here is the game Kahoot. You can log in via kahoot.it. I'll give you the passcode. So it is something like this. We have a question over here. We have four options here, and with the second screen, I suggest to go with mobile. So you can choose the colors as per the answers, and you can give the answer like this. URL, you can just search on Google kahoot.it. So this is the game pin. Please use your original names so that there won't be any confusion at the end, or else winner may lose the chance to get the voucher. Right, Jackie?
Guys, also please give the feedback. So like if you want any suggestion, like where we can improve, so please give us feedback.
So
This is
we
like
have 33.
what I experienced in my past, like object store and persistent VM. These are bit complex topic, so they seems to be a simple, but not that simple. Basically, it is bit of complex topics. Okay, like
Lightner, can you please rejoin with your original, because we don't have any person with Lightner, right? Because it will be confusion at the end. Yeah, Jackie, that's right. VM and object store are always confusing. So thanks for the session. It's always helpful.
yeah, yeah. I feel like this persistent queue, like that is just a small checkbox, but it have a lot of impacts. Basically, like when to use, why to use, why should not we use. So it have a lot of things, like lot of things to do with performance and all those things.
Uh, so 1 more minute we'll wait. We have 36 now, and then I'll lock the screen so no one else can later join the session. Oh, sorry, quiz. Okay, I'm locking the quiz, Jackie. Yeah,
Okay.
we have 35 here. Okay, starting. Okay, so Harish, Suresh, and Ramkrishna. Great.
It's a
Okay,
false because like
yeah,
for version 2, object store and application are in the same region.
yeah. You explained in the session as well. So we have
Yeah.
Harish, Tarun, and Rakesh now. Okay, next question. What is the maximum number of keys that can persist in object store v2? I
Very
guess questions
easy.
are. Yeah, easy ones, right? Because you explained them very well. Okay, but still, okay. We have Harish, Tarun, and Tarun. Great. Where does CloudHub's persistent object store the data? Okay. Yes, we have a question as well, right, Jackie, on this?
Yeah.
Oh, still confusion. Okay, so Harish on still on top. Tarun, Ramaswamy. Great. Okay.
Yes. Where? You know? It is.
Yeah, yeah.
It SQS.
Yeah. Okay. So Harish is on fire. Tarun and Tarun again. Great.
Le- Harish is on fire. Let's hire.
Okay. How many characters can a key have? Okay.
Mhm. In Object Store version 2.
Oh yes. Okay. Okay. So I guess we are done, right? Okay. Sorry. Second last question. I forgot. Oh oh. Okay. So it was a confusing question, I guess.
It can connect using the HTTP request operation.
Yeah. Okay. So last question. Super.
Let me take the picture of this.
Yeah, yeah, please. Okay.
Tarun, Tarun
Congrats.
always wins at a Surat.
Okay. So great. Congratulations, winners.
Congratulations.
And even runners up, Nitin. Sorry, I forgot. Missed the second name. Harish, Tarun, Rathore, and Tarun Kumar. Okay. So back to the original. Okay, I'll stop sharing. Uh, Winners, please
Done
share
today.
the.
So
Yeah, we are done. Winners, I just need the email address.
so guys, please give the we have like upcoming session on any point data graph like on 10th of July, and like we I think we have a one session on next week also, right?
Yes, next
On
week we have a session.
on identity management. Okay, yeah. Yeah. So guys, like
Yes, and
I suggest everyone to explore the graph, which has been launched
yeah,
by MuleSoft recently. Yeah. So I think let's it's already late, so we can close it like today. So sorry, like
yes,
we will not
Jackie.
able to networking today. So that's fine.
Yeah, okay. So I have all the email address. Thank you everyone. Thanks, Jackie, for a
Thank you,
great
sir.
session.
Thank you.